Hey class, I was researching Bryce Canyon for this assignment and I actually fell in love with it. It's such a beautiful place, and hopefully my presentation shows you the beauty that I saw in it and maybe you fall in love with it. We'll see. Alright, time to teach you guys about Bryce Canyon. So where is Bryce Canyon even located? Well, Bryce Canyon is actually located in the middle of Utah. So Utah is surrounded by Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and Nevada. So that should give you a little idea, but just in case you don't know where that is, because, I don't know, you don't know your states, here's a little picture of it right there. So the number of visitors Bryce Canyon gets like yearly is like 1.5 million. And this makes a lot of sense to me because it's actually a very pretty place and I hope one day I get to see it. And I understand why so many people want to see it because it's just very visually pleasing. Bryce Canyon is mostly made up of sedimentary rock, also of limestone, which form much of the Claron Formation and are particularly susceptible to erosion, which is why some structures are actually made because of this susceptibility. And I will later explain why, but for now I'm just going to cover why most of it is actually sedimentary rock. This is actually because streams and rivers brought up a lot of sedimentary deposit, and this sedimentary deposit eventually created layers, and you could actually see this in pictures. I'll pull up right there. Like, those layers are sedimentary deposits that over time just hardened, and that's why most of it is in fact sedimentary rock. And these rocks were formed like about 64 million years ago. Bryce Canyon is actually known for these things called hoodoos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm doing this in one take. So hoodoos are basically like a tall, thin spiral of rock formed by erosion. And I'll get into more detail of how that occurs, is like weathering and stuff like that. But yeah, this is basically one of the things they're known for, and not because they have it, but there's actually a lot of them. I'm gonna show another picture right there. And yeah, they're just famous because it has like a lot of them everywhere, and they're like in groups, and they just look cool like when you see them from afar. And it's just a very visually pleasing view. Go into more geological detail of how the hoodoos were actually made. Basically, it's just weathering, uneven weathering to be specific. So to give you context, 200 days of the year, the region experienced very high temperatures and very low temperatures. And what this caused is water that seeped in through the mountain froze and then expanded, and then this basically just broke the mountain into the structure that you see in the picture that I showed of what the hoodoos look like. Just a little picture that kind of visualizes what I was trying to explain. So just the water goes inside, it freezes, and then basically it expands inside of the mountain, and then this causes it to break. And yeah, it's just a little picture so you guys can see what I was trying to explain. So Bryce Canyon is actually located in the North American plate and the Farallon plate, and these boundaries are actually convergent. And because of this, the Farallon plate was actually subducted underneath the North American plate. And this actually goes on to explain a later point I'll make in the video, that there was layers and they were continuous and they become discontinuous because of this event. But first, let me give you context of why exactly this happens in the first place. Because of where Bryce Canyon is located in the two boundaries relationships, a lot of the stress that you see in Bryce Canyon is tensional stress. Some examples of this are Bryce Point Fault, the Peekaboo Fault, and the Fairyland Fault. All of these have tensional stress applied to them, which then cause normal faults. And this actually brings me to a point of the history that is able to be seen with the layers of Bryce Canyon and how they used to be continuous, but they now separate. So as I mentioned earlier, Bryce Canyon is mostly filled with sedimentary rocks. And this basically means that it was formed as a result of deposition of sediments. Because of this, building up layers of sediment. But these layers are horizontal, but basically there's at a fault, part of the rock is like displaced, and then a lot of these layers are no longer continuous. And then some examples are like the Bryce Canyon, include the Bryce Point Fault, and then I'm pretty sure that's what this picture is. And then it's basically just like they used to be like continuous layers, but then because they're breaking, like, you know how we learned the hanging wall and then the floor wall. That's basically what's happening. I find that picture very cool because the crack is basically evidence of what happened in the past for the Bryce Canyon. Basically just evidence of a time when nearby areas were being uplifted by volcanic activity and eroded by streams. And these streams are actually the reason why you see that brown color, because these streams flowed through the area that we know as Bryce Canyon, and it deposited this gray to brown like tint that you see in the rock. And yeah, that's just the reason why it's cracked and the layers are not continuous anymore. And yeah, that was my presentation of Bryce Canyon. I guess to summarize, I would just like something that I personally learned a lot from this was how like the layers and like the cracks specifically show the history of the boundaries and how the tension like affected the overall landscape. And that's something that that just stuck with me when I was researching, and I found very interesting. But yeah, it was a really cool place, and I hope I get to visit it one day. Thank you for watching.